Hi and welcome to my maths class. Now this section revolves around circle geometry. But before we start the section, you need to understand a basic vocabulary. Now this here is called the circumference. Or basically from one point we're starting, we go right round till the end is called the circumference. When we have a line that cuts right through the center, then that is called the diameter. Then we have a tangent. Now a tangent is a line that cuts only one point on the circle. Can you see? When it's passing, it's touching one point and finish. It's not touching another point. Now a tangent doesn't need to be at the bottom. It can be anywhere. It can be on top. They could draw only half of it. They could continue, draw the entire thing. But the essence is that it's only touching one point of the circle. Now, the next thing you need to know is the radius. The radius is from the center of the circle to the circumference of the circle. So it's going from the middle to the circumference. That is called the radius. Now radius again doesn't need to be at specific points. In a circle I can have many radii. I can have more than one radius, which then they call as radii. But you can have many. I can have one here. I can have another one here. I can have many radii. And you would notice that the radius in your circle geometry is like your lifeline. Whenever you're stuck, then it seems like the radius rescues you. So when we take from the center of the circle and we're going out to the circumference, then we know we have a radius. Okay, now let's take another circle. Okay, now we know the basic radius, diameter, circumference, tangent. Those are words that are going to come quite often in your proofs and in your normal geometry. Other words that come, you get words like same segment. Now what do they mean when they say, hey, you know what, this is in the same segment? You get things like the angle in the same segment or angle in the opposite segment. What they refer to is, if you have a line that is from one end of the circumference till the other end of the circumference. Now notice, this line is not in the center like the diameter. It can be anywhere. I can draw one there, I can draw one here. But basically, this line is cutting the circle. That is what it's doing. It's cutting the circle. So we call these chords. But look what happens as soon as I extend it out. So I'm taking the same line and I've extended it out. Now we no more calling it a chord. Now we're calling it a secant. So the only difference between a chord and a secant is that a chord is basically going to stop by the circumference, whereas in a secant is going to continue, whoops, go right through. That is what a secant does. It goes through the circle. Okay, it's a straight line, even though mine doesn't look very straight. Let's draw a neat one first. So a secant would be a line that is drawn through the circle. It's starting here and it's going through. But again, can you see? Nothing about it going through the center, nothing about it stopping. The whole essence is that it's a straight line and it's cutting through the circle. Then you hear the word called an arc. Now an arc is basically from one secant to another, and then we are getting an arc. Or even if you say from one chord to another. So this little chunk here, they're going to call it an arc. And then they'll tell you, okay, you know what? That's the small arc. So then this whole thing here from one point to another is the major arc. So they'll call this a minor arc and they'll call this a major arc. You see? Because it's smaller, minor. Because it's bigger, major. So when they're talking of the curves, basically the curves that are running from one point to another point, then they are meaning that that is an arc. See, minor arc, small. Major arc, big. Then they got a thing called minor segment and major segment. Minor segment refers to this chord is cutting the circle in pieces. That's what it's doing. It's cutting it in pieces. So this is a minor segment and this part is a major segment. So if we were to color in, I'm going to color the minor segment purple and then I'm going to color my major segment yellow. It is important that you know tangent, radius, diameter. Those are three important words. You need to know these three very well. The others would come in at small moments, but they're not going to tell you, mark for me the minor arc, mark for me the major segment, mark for me the major arc. They're not going to do that. If I say angles in the same segment, then you must know, okay, so I'm looking maybe at this segment, or maybe even that, because if they're both in the same segment. So they're lying on the same side, basically. Those are the only vocabulary you really need to concentrate on. But you must understand it before you can go to your Euclid geometry for grade 11. Thank you for watching.